Today, we're making a comic book.
Hey, Blue Crew. If you've been keeping up with me online, you're going to know that I just finished drawing my first ever comic book for print. It took about 5 or 6 months, and I'm so excited that I'm finally done. But drawing it was only half the work. Now I have to print it. I decided that I wanted to print it from home, and I did a lot of research, watched a lot of videos, read a ton of articles in order to get an idea of exactly what I should do. Well, as it turns out, there's a lot of different things that you can do to print a comic book at home. So I did some trial and error, tried to see what worked best for me to bring a great quality product to you that I could still be involved in from start to finish. And I'm going to give you my tips and tricks and the things that I learned, what to do, what not to do in order to print this comic book. So let's get started.
All right, first things first, I mocked up an example page. So this is what the size of my comic will be when it's finished. It's going to be 28 pages, yes. 28 pages with a cover, and printing can be really challenging because with 28 pages plus cover, what you end up with is 8 sheets of paper, and each paper is going to have 4 images on it, front and back. So to make sure that I align everything correctly and I don't mix up my comic, so that way when it's bound and folded, it will look correct and everything will be in order. I did a mock-up so that I can see what one page is going to have on it. And I'm also going to be using these as a test of how I need to feed my printer, because I really am not good at that kind of organization, making sure that everything is properly set up so that once I feed the paper, I have everything facing the direction it's supposed to, including when I turn it around. So let's see how many tries it takes before I get this right. This is my printer. It's the Epson ET8550. It's the newest model of their EcoTank line that's made for printing art and photography. Honestly, the only reason I got the newest one is because the older one from previous years, it was discontinued and phased out. So I couldn't get it. I would have rather got that one, honestly, because the price tag on this was way too much. But the cost up front definitely equals out when you consider the cost of the ink. So one of the biggest concerns that I had for an art printer was not really the quality. Of course, quality is important, but that gets into a whole paper conversation that we're not having right now. But the cost of the ink, because I did a lot of research for lots of printers that have beautiful results, gorgeous results, but after printing like 20 pages, you have to refill the ink, and it costs hundreds of dollars, plus it's cartridge, and cartridges can dry out pretty quick. So I had a lot of concern about that and decided to go with a well style inkjet printer. So yeah, that's what I ended up with. And one of my art friends here on YouTube, Obscure Beauty Art, check her out, she had the older version of the Epson, and she had nothing but good things to say. I have good things and bad things to say about this model, but this video is not about buying a printer. It's about printing a comic book. So I just wanted to show you real quick what I will be using today. If you want a review of this, let me know, because I can do that in another video. Just leave it in the comments below. Anyway, let's move on. So I went ahead and made a template for how I will be printing off my comic pages on an 8.5 by 11, just to make sure that everything is lined up appropriately and I have the correct and same spacing between the two images. So now I'm going to try to line up the pictures to cover the boxes that I made with no gaps, so that way I make sure that they stay in the same space, and hopefully those two boxes are lined up, because I did do a flip of the canvas to try to make sure that it is, but I'm going to look at it again. and it's very hard to see because it's dark, but basically it should look like this. So whatever I see on my template here needs to mirror what is on my screen. All right, printing the first page is not a big issue, right? It's obvious, you put it in, you print it. What matters is the perspective of the back page compared to the front page. I'm so nervous. Let's take a look and see if I managed. Oh my God, I'm so nervous. Did I do it right? Did I do it right? Oh, hell yeah. Back page, page 13, front sided, yes, test page number 10. Facing the right direction, and front, correct sides. Yes, I got it right the first try. All right, now that I know what I'm doing, I can set up all of the pages to be printed, and we just gotta wait for the paper. Paper. No, that's not gonna work. Paper, postcard, no, that ain't gonna work. Paper, stickers, paper, oh, yeah, I need paper. It's here, my paper's here, oh my God, let's go get it. Yes. New paper to try. Nice. So we have two different kinds of paper that I'm gonna try. One of them is gloss, and one of them is matte. I've seen reviews of both types of paper being used. I'm really not sure which one is gonna look better, so let's try both and see how it goes. The gloss is also heavier, 180 GSM, versus the matte, which is 130 GSM. So a lot of times you're gonna see people talking about pound weights of paper if you live in the United States, but because we have text weight paper and cover weight paper, if you're not clear on which one is which, you can get really confused about what you're buying, because like a 60-pound text paper is a lot smaller, a lot thinner than a 60-pound cover paper. So I prefer to go with GSM. When I looked it up, it said that most comic books are printed on 100 to 130 GSM. So let's see what works. Alright, let's go to load some paper. I always load from the back because I don't want to risk any bending or creases. Let's see how this matte, okay, all right, the matte feels good. Doesn't seem too thick, seems like the paper is maybe a little bit thicker than a regular paper, but I think this is gonna go really well. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, okay. 7 pages of comic book. You know what, before we get started, let's take a look at the gloss too. Maybe gloss is the way to go. Let's see, just, okay. Oh girl, she's thick. This is intense. Okay, I was thinking about using gloss for the inside as well, but this is really thick. Can you guys tell? This 180 GSM, I think it's too heavy. Oh man, okay, so this is not gonna work for the inside. This is really heavy. But you know what, let's put it to the side. Maybe for the cover. Maybe I can still use this. Okay, so here we are in front of my window. It's a beautiful day. Get some natural sunlight and take a look at these example prints that I tried to do on the matte and gloss paper. So you guys already know, I just said a minute ago that the gloss felt super heavy. I had no intention of making the internal pages gloss with that kind of heaviness. So I just went directly to the internal. So here's the first page that I tried. Of course, it would have to be cut, right, to fit the size, but the colors came out really good. And my biggest concern was smudging and then being able to write on it, just in case, So I have some special things that I want to do to my limited edition first run that requires some writing on the page. So I had to try that as well, especially for the cover. But anyway, this does not smudge at all. It's not too heavy for the inside. And as you can see, it is matte, so it has no shine. And I was also really concerned about being able to see through it. Of course, if you hold something up to the light, you'll be able to see through it. But when it has something behind it, as a book would, there is no see-through as compared to at least the plain white paper that I was using for my example, just to make sure I knew how to print it in order and that everything looked right. So double-sided printing absolutely works. I had no bleed through. The only issue that I had, and this happens a lot whenever I'm doing any kind of printing, is that some things, like for example, this scene, it came out way too dark, way saturated, and that's only because, as you know, if you are using digital methods to create art, you're working with usually an RGB spectrum with lighting behind it, because of course, your screen has to be lit up, and that's going to change how your colors look when you print it, which is where you go into the CMYK. And I don't bother, honestly, changing them over, because most of the time, I'd say a solid 95% of the time, I don't see a lot of a difference between using the RGB and the CMYK. That could just be because of what I'm actually doing. But in this case, I do see it. So I did try using some different settings on the same kind of paper to see if it helped. So I changed my paper settings on my printer, which is going to be different for each person, each printer type. I tried doing a plain white paper setting instead of a matte paper setting, and that's just going to change how much ink it lays down. So it did improve a tiny bit here, but then it also messed up the way that Friday's skin looks. So here she's looking incredibly washed out. When using the regular setting, the matte paper setting, it looks much, much better, more true to the character. And then I also tried using a thin paper setting, and oh my God, that's just no. That's a hard no. So I will go back into my original file and just put a screen over this, a filter screen to make it lighter when I go to print it, which is something that I do with a lot of my prints anyway. I will add like a slight blue cast or a slight red cast or something just to change the tone of the colors, because I know that when I print it, it's going to look a little bit different. Like I said, most of the time I don't really have a problem. It mostly comes up with something super saturated like this, or when I am printing Nick, because something about Nick's skin tone, it just does not agree with my printer. And that brings us to the gloss, which is perfect for the cover. This came out really, really nice. So this is thick, like I said before, way too thick to make a whole book out of if I only used this, because it would just be so heavy and not easy to turn the pages. I feel like it would just not be a good vibe. I was not into it, but I wanted to give it a chance for the cover because I liked the texture, the heaviness for the cover, and I also like the finish. It's very classic comic book cover. The colors came out great, very sharp, very nice. So you can see here that I put a little bit more blue, so that way when I cut it, it won't have an obvious white line, so far I haven't had that issue. And then this one, because I plan to write in it, I had to put some examples. So I tried writing in gel pen, and it doesn't smear, right? Nothing was smearing, that was not a problem. But it doesn't come out very, very strong, right? So you can kind of see where the ball of the gel pen left a track, which is no bueno. I do not like that. But the Sharpie turned out great. So this is perfect for writing on these first run editions. And I will most likely just buy a pack of Sharpies in different colors because I don't want to make it just black. So I'm really, really excited how this is turning out. I'm really happy with the paper. I will put, again, the paper in the description box. I don't know, maybe this is not the best paper ever. There could be better things. Like, I mean, I don't know how you could improve on the gloss one. The gloss one I really love. But, like, there are tiny, tiny things that I can tell, like little pinpricks if you look super close, right? If the camera would focus, you can kind of see maybe a tiny little bit of, like, not pixelation, I don't know how else to describe it, but I mean, could a different kind of paper do better? Maybe, but for around 30 cents a page, this is not bad. So I'm going to drop it in the description box below, and if in the future I decide to change the paper I use, try something else, I will definitely come back and update the description box and let you guys know. So moving on, let's see if I can handle printing all these pages and binding it.
One chance, one shot, one chance, one move, one dance, one shot, one chance, one move, one one shot, one chance, one move, one dance, one shot. Brace yourself for the Vegas. For the Vegas.
Weeks of work, and here we are. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I really, really like how this book turned out. The cover is so bright and vivid, and the paper is just the right texture to make it feel like an actual book in your hand. The binding was tricky and the cutting was tricky. I added a couple extra little touches to make this first run extra special. In the end, I'm really happy with how this turned out as far as a home print job goes. It feels legit. It feels like an actual book that you would buy at the store. So honestly, I'm super impressed. I tried to make it look like a book that you would buy at the store, you know, with the front and the back. little comments on exactly what the book is, what to expect. Overall, I am super happy with it, but it was not an easy task, let me tell you. I'll just give you a little hint, give you a couple tips on things I learned the hard way. Yeah, tip number one, investing in your tools. You would think, obviously, Blue, like that goes without saying, right? Wrong. Yeah. So I tried to just make it work with what I had. And as you can see, that was not working. Like, for example, the stapler, I thought that, if I just use a regular stapler on a hard surface, I would be able to make it work and bind my book. But nope, I had to shell out for a book binding stapler. Same thing with the slicer. So I bought my slicer originally for prints. I wasn't really concerned with having to do big stacks of paper. Turns out, yeah, there's a reason that there are different kinds of slicers for different amounts of paper, because this one was not working. I thought I could make it work, unfold my book. So I'm only cutting 8 pages because it's supposed to be able to cut 10 pages. Surprise, surprise, that's 10 regular size pages, not these heavier GSMs that I had bought. So really do consider the scope of all the projects you're going to be doing when you are buying your materials and your tools. You might think it's smart to save some money up front by buying cheaper equipment, but it can actually turn out to cost you more in the long run. Before you buy your materials, do your research. Make sure you know exactly what you're going to need. Like, for example, I had to look up what kind of paper I would use for the cover and the inside, deciding exactly what weight I needed. It took a lot of research. I did a lot of Googling, read a lot of articles, watched some videos, so that way I wouldn't waste money buying material I couldn't use. Another thing that I had to be really, really cautious about was making sure that I bought the right paper for my printer. So there were a ton of different papers that were available for a lot cheaper, double-sided, that I thought would work. But when I read the fine print, they were laser papers. They were not for inkjet printers. So I could have wasted a lot of money if I wasn't careful checking to make sure that I got exactly what I needed. Even the size is really important, right? So I had to decide how big was my book. And in order to properly fold the book in half, in order to make the 4-sided system that I used for this comic book, I had to make sure I got the right size paper. So while a regular letter size worked for me, if you're trying to make something bigger, that might not work for you. You might have to go to a size bigger. So just make sure that you are checking your materials and you are buying exactly what you need for the job.
Regardless of the fact that I have tried really hard with lots of trials to make sure that I don't waste any material, of course, I still did. Lots of things have gone wrong while I was trying to make this comic book. Like, for example, a whole book, 6 pages almost, printing wrong. So, like, the front and the back didn't match because for some reason, when I was printing 4 copies at a time, one page skipped. And that one single page messed up the alignment of all of them. So I wasted all of this freaking paper, this ink, this time. It's so frustrating. Not only printing issues, but cutting issues. So for example, I tried to cut this book. Unfortunately, I wasn't holding it straight enough. So now it's crooked. And of course, quality control, I can't have that. So fortunately for this one, I'm able to keep it as an example to show at the convention for people to put their hands on. And I don't have to worry about dirtying or smudging a pristine comic book. I can just go ahead and package them all up before I go. So I can reuse this, but still, it could have been a waste. And if I'm not careful, more will come out like this. They will be messed up because I didn't cut them properly. Lots of issues. I had to throw away the entire first copy that I printed because I used tools that weren't up for the job. So definitely be ready to produce a lot of waste. Yeah, so if you're an artist like me who is accustomed to doing prints and stuff like that, you will not be ready for the cost of shipping a comic book So normally if I were to do a domestic shipping with these US postage stamps valued at around 58 cents, normally a couple of prints, 2, 3 prints, whatever I happen to be sending, would only take one stamp. So around 50 something cents when I'm sending without tracking. Same thing for international. One of these global stamps valued at around $1.30 would be sufficient to send a couple of prints. But as it turns out, surprise, surprise, a comic book weighs a lot more than a couple of pieces of paper. So instead of taking one of these, it takes about 3 to send it internationally. And when I'm sending domestically, it takes 1 of these, and sometimes, depending on if there's a little bit more in there, 1 of these. So instead of taking 50 cents to ship domestically, which is why domestic shipping is free, it now costs almost $2. And same thing for international shipping, which normally costs almost $2. Now it's costing $4. So make sure to budget in your project that shipping will cost more. So whether or not you want to put that in front and add that to the cost of the comic book itself, or if you want to set up special shipping rates for your comic book, just think about that, because honestly, I'm stuck eating the cost. I already said that I was going to charge $10 for the comic book, so it's just eating into my profits, which hurts. But again, as I've said before, I'm not making this comic book to make a profit. I just want it to be able to balance out. So in the end, for me, it's not the biggest deal, but for you, it might be. Definitely check before you post your prices. Check with your local post office. Have them tell you how much it's going to cost to send, or use an app or a website and a scale, so that way you are ready and you're not shocked at the post office counter like I was.
Thank you guys for going on this journey with me. I'm really excited to have made my first comic book for print. I definitely couldn't have done it without you. A lot of you donated funds for me to be able to get this material together. I also have a pre-order still running as of the time of this video. I have 2 more copies of these books, first run, that will be hand signed by me. If you are interested, check it out on my website. I will have the link in the description. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for seeing me through this. I couldn't have done it without you. Until next time, please make smart decisions, and I will see you in the next one.